Okay. All right. We're all set.
Well, yep. Good morning. It's Wednesday again, and we have what, two left before January,
Time is speeding by. I'm
right?
talking about in the fast lane with a fast pass.
So we've got, people traveling. We've got weather that the Northeast is supposed to get dumped with major snow soon, and we're looking at some here in Georgia possibly next week.
Hey, that old song is beginning to look a lot like Christmas. It's here.
Now, are you
It's
talking about the weather or my bank account?
ooh. What that bank account looking like?
It's kind of like that president of the tree. I don't want to open it
Ooh.
just in
Okay.
case.
Okay.
So I don't know. I'm not. I'm kind of letting my eyes take a holiday, I guess.
That's okay, man. Christmas is still right around the corner, so it still can
Yeah,
come in.
yeah. So how was your week?
And so busy getting ready
Right.
for a big weekend with the Mayor's Mass Ball. Um, Big occasion, just done annually, and I help with the management of that. So it's a big production for this year.
Yep. Well, we've got something actually we're going to touch on in a little bit. Not necessarily having to do with the mayor, but he might be a major impact on this because we're going to talk about something that we just heard last night that's changed in Georgia.
Wow, what's that?
So, well, let's see. We can go ahead and just go straight to that. Actually, the Court of Appeals is set to review Georgia's medical marijuana bid process.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that came out last night. What they're first of all saying is about in Adele, Georgia, Trulieve, the medical marijuana plant, looked like 2 years ago there was finally a process for marijuana medicinal here in Georgia. And to the east of it, in Glenville, State Representative Bill Wershnick, I might have said that wrong, points to another medical cannabis facility that's under construction. So, we've seen that, the growing license and everything else that's going on in Georgia and the plus, but there's been some issues that have been discovered now. 2 years of
Yeah,
bids, awards, protests, lawsuits in the state. Medical Marijuana Commission finally issued license to Trulieve and Botanical Sciences to grow cannabis here in Georgia. But wasn't there supposed to be 8 of them?
6 or 8. I remember they had approved um, the companies that can license the medicinal oil, and then the lawsuits came out soon as they announced um, those companies.
Yep, and that's what I was just about to mention too. That while some were cutting ribbons, the legal wrangling was heating up. Georgia Court of Appeals recently gave the go-ahead to loosening the medical marijuana bidders to challenge who was selected to grow the process and how they were picked. For
Definitely,
example,
I
the
can
attorney
see
Jake
that.
Evans.
Yeah, I definitely can see that. And I think one of the things from a discussionary standpoint, you want to know, well, how is the selection done so that way that there's equity for all individuals who applied, so that way that they can adequately qualify. But a lot of times with states, believe it or not, it may be some people in the state that may be behind the companies or have their hands in the pot with those companies, which is a level of biasness. Um, some people call it inside trading,
Right.
which is unfair. So I definitely understand why the lawsuits went out, and that's why we're where we are as of today, with no licensed growers in place.
Well, just like what you were stating, attorney Jake Evans in Atlanta and Kristen Goodman in Savannah, they represent a total of 5 medical marijuana companies that are challenging the license process.
Right.
Kristen, for example, the members of the Medical Cannabis Commission knew who the owners were of these companies, who these companies were affiliated with, and they scored in an arbitrary way, frankly, sometimes nonsensical way. Georgians have to know there was no corruption, that none of the licenses was bought, added Evans. But right there, that's going to show that automatically there seems to be some issues because they're already questioning who got it, how they got it, and why they got it.
I would put it like this here, that the qualifying fee to obtain those licenses, I think you had to have a quarter million. Don't quote me wrong on that one, but it was definitely a six-figure fee that you had to have in place, which looks like those licenses were bought.
Hmm.
But I think one of the most important things in structure and setup is being able to have the ability and means to maintain compliance. So if you, let's just say it took $250,000 to obtain the license, you still have to have operating capital.
Right.
So what happens if you just only got 90,000 or 150,000? You're still well short of what it takes to qualify, and then you still need money to actually operate and maintain compliance. So, true indeed, there are some factors that, when you stir the pot, that may be unfavorable for people who don't have the equity. But at the same time, you still got to look at what businesses are ready to do business right now.
Right. Well, that's one of the things too. These attorneys even go further to say that their clients and others lost legal battles to overturn the bid selection. The attorneys are convinced the court to appeal the legal process for losing bidders because it was fatally flawed and they were denied the right to a fair appeal. Evans states that it means that they're going to have their day in court, which hopefully they'll get a fair shake. The point, as Goodman says, is to hold accountable the legislators and the evaluators to allow this to happen.
Absolutely. And in that situation, transparency is very important. The public has a right to know when it comes to that. The people are the ones that did elect these persons and put them in office. So there is an accountability that's supposed to come back and return to everyone who did cast their vote to put these individuals in office. Some of these positions or some of the people are appointed positions as well. So you still, even though they're in the position of working in the state, there's still a level of transparency that have to be there. So I definitely understand why people want to know why the lawsuits were actually filed. And the only thing we can hope is that there's a reasonable resolve. There'll be some form of transparency and disclosure regarding the process, and then hopefully it'll be acceptable. If it's not
Right.
acceptable, it'll be definitely a big, big problem.
Well, and what you're talking about, transparency, we're about to get to that because for 2 years, Fox 5 here in Atlanta, and you and I have talked about it, they actually tried to show up to these processes, whether it be at the Capitol, the court building, or whatever, because they had heard that there was discussion about trying to get medical here in Georgia. And every time they showed up, they were either denied entry or stated that there was no meeting about this in session. So right there's part of the cover up to begin with.
Yeah, that cover up has been there for quite a time now, and I think that even we had discussed about going down to the
Mhm.
Capitol to be a part of the sessions, and those sessions were canceled. Um,
Not
so
just
you
canceled. One of them during that time frame, they put the actual Capitol building on what was it, lockdown for what,
for
6 weeks
COVID,
or something? Yeah. So
yeah,
you couldn't even get on the grounds, let alone in the building.
nah, and that's something that you have to look at it and know and understand that we're still coming out of things post COVID, and things are not what they were said to be.
Right.
When you think about what's occurring with Dr. Fauci actually retiring and a lot of statements that he made, either he contradicted himself or went back and said that um, science didn't support the findings at the time. Um,
Just
we
like
can
the
either
emails
hold
that
him,
came out.
yeah, we can hold him to a harsh criticism, or what we can do is we can call it, an experiment at the end of the day. And there is a level of trial and error in all levels of business, including government. So maybe he should get a pass in those regards.
Yep. But now even the report goes even further to say that Fox 5 was able to get some information out of it. And the reports exposed controversial corporate backgrounds involving four of the winning bidders, including Trulieve, whose CEO Kim Rivers' husband, JT Burnett, is currently in federal prison on public corruption charges. Now, Trulieve says Burnett had nothing to do with their company, but this is the husband of one of the high ups, the CEO itself. So there's the question. He may not have been involved, but if there was corruption on his end, could there be corruption on other?
Money is definitely the root of all evil. And when there's a way to obtain it, if you have insider information, and it takes away opportunity from other people, especially from a illegal standpoint, there's going to be consequences for it. And obviously, the process does have its level of flaws. You got people involved in it, and nobody's perfect. So
Right.
on that one, I'm on straddle the fence on that one. That one I can't blame someone on that because you still have a process that's done by people. The bona fide process itself, I feel should be done by a computer, like the lottery. You
Right.
throw all the names in there and then let the computer choose through its own design as far as algorithms is concerned, and let the computer choose it. That way, it doesn't fall on one individual's head.
Well, we do the same thing, like, Ticketmaster, and a lot of these fan clubs do it for early ticket sales. You sign up, you join, you get an access code, and then they do the random lottery.
Right. And that's a great process. And what it does is it is a thrill for the ones that win. It is definitely a
Yeah.
thrill. But at least that it was done in a fair way instead of a partial way.
Yep. Well, even more to the fact of what you're talking about money, an Atlanta entrepreneur here, Paul Judge, his company that he's involved with, TheraTrue, weeks after he was selected for one of these lucrative licenses, Judge contributed $50,000 to Governor Kemp's leadership committee. So there's your tie-in, possibly, not saying for a fact, but possibly of money tied in with politics, tied in with political favors.
Absolutely. The one thing I can tell you and assure you in regarding to politics, if you play politics, there's an opportunity to leverage yourself ahead of everybody. And, to a degree, it's fair. To a degree, it's unfair. And the reason why I say to a degree it's fair, we live in a world that's based off of opportunity. If you're ready and prepared for opportunity or are able to facilitate opportunity, you have that chance.
Mhm.
If you don't have that opportunity, then what you have to do is wait till you do have the opportunity. So, for the people, I don't want to call it seed money or that they're seeding their opportunities in there, but generally, I've learned in this world it's about who you know.
Right. No,
So,
absolutely it is. Because right here, for example, Fox 5 also reported how thousands of pages of winning bids by law were redacted, kept secret from losing bidders, the public, and, as we stated earlier, the media. The scoring of those winning bids by political appointment commissioners were also kept a secret from the public, the media, and legislators.
now that's illegal.
Right.
That's downright out a dirty shame. That one right there, I can't explain that one. That one is a situation where um, when it comes out, whoever blows the whistle, um, somebody's going to be in trouble and somebody's going to jail.
Yep. And State Representative Alan Powell came out and said, do we need to step in and change this meltdown to get this done? He and other legislators to fix that many saw a selection process that favored political connections.
And I can see that. Um, you know, One of the things that we do as we network and market ourselves is we attract and lure opportunity to us.
Right.
And, by um, pledging to a cause or pledging to a political candidate, normally that's how that's done. That's how the old lobbying was done at that point in time. I can't tell you countlessly how the number of large corporations that will send checks to political candidates, and it's to leverage law and legislation that go toward the direction of their business. And to me, that is a form of marketing But at the same time, by law, that's wrong.
Well,
The
remember we
political
discussed it.
candidates.
Right.
Go
We
ahead.
discussed it with Publix, the Harris, how she gave all of that money to help fight making cannabis and hemp legal in Florida due to the fact of it would hurt her prescription business with Publix.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And people will do things in the interest of their own business,
Of course.
for their own personal gain. And in politics, it's illegal. You are appointed by the public, so you should not gain from the decisions that you make. Some of the positions in politics are volunteer, some of the positions in politics are paid, and they compensate you to handle the public trust. And when the public can't trust you, you're out of there. So,
Well, the thing is, for example, I'm not going to point any names because we could spend days probably going through a list. But for these viewers, if you're interested, go and look at how many of these political leaders go into office with X money, and when they leave office, they are now up here.
um, I would say that because they have access to all of the resources and the knowledge within the city government or state government that they're in. Um, and at the end of the day, there's an opportunity to make a gain. People gonna make that gain. People live their lives to live a better life the next day, the next week, the next month, the next year, the next decade. Um, in one sense, you can't blame them for doing so, but in another sense, because you're in a political position or a political office that's appointed, you still have to serve the public trust. And when you cannot serve the public trust, uh, you can't not be in that office. It's just bottom line. So that's why I feel that certain businessmen, certain businesswomen, um, if they choose to go into the political arenas, they have to sit down or sit aside their business aspirations at that point, so that way it does not be a conflict of interest for the public.
Well, that's true, and absolutely. Just like, for example, no matter what people's thoughts are, when Trump went in office, that's what he did. He stepped down from Trump Enterprises and allowed his family to run it. So yeah, of course, he still had a tie in, but quote unquote, his day to day operation, he stepped aside from.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
now, yeah. So I was going to say, while these two companies forge ahead, the Georgia Court of Appeals will now weigh in on whether the legal procedure for 4 other lucrative licenses was done right. With this type of medical cannabis, we've got to ensure that there is integrity in the product, getting the product to the public, Evan stated, because we're looking at an estimated 25,000 Georgia patients waiting for the medical marijuana. But if you notice, we said these two companies are going to forge ahead while the Court of Appeals is for the other 4. So these two, right, wrong, or indifferent, are going to have the leg up. They're already in. So now they're looking at these other 4 and questioning whether they are legal or not. Why not do all of them?
That one right there is questionable.
Mm-hmm.
It gives them an unfair advantage because now they occupy lane number one and number two.
Right.
They can also establish and set the industry standards, depending on how aggressive they are in business, which can turn into an unfair monopoly for them. So that definitely has to be looked at because it does not give equal opportunity for people. There's no equity for people.
No, you're right on everything that you're stating so far because, like you said, lanes 1 and 2. Is this a 6-lane highway, a 4-lane highway? Who's got the advantage? Obviously, these two companies will hit the ground running.
Right.
And right now they're
Yeah,
saying in the
that's
Court of Appeals it could take months before ruling is issued. So let's say 8 months. So now we're talking August. So these people already have what, 6 to 7 months at least in their back pocket of business, cultivating, producing, manufacturing, advertising, everything.
advertising, branding, marketing.
Mm-hmm.
They got an 8 month head start.
Right.
And with them being financially solvent, for the ones that's not, it definitely takes away an opportunity for them to be strong.
Right.
So this is definitely unfair. and something should be done about it.
Well, think about it in terms of whether you want to say a coffee company or whatever. We all know who the major marketers are, the major national companies. Let's say one of these two were just the same way with the backing and everything else behind them. They obviously have an unfair advantage pushing forward that these smaller companies, I don't know that mom and pop would be in this type businesses, but there's going to be smaller companies for sure. They're already going to be behind that wall.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's definitely an unfair advantage, and what it continues to do, it creates these issues of trust,
Mm-hmm.
especially for the elected officials. And as long as people continue to question that and they're able to show the biasness there, it's going to always be a conflict. It's going to always be some type of scandal
Right.
that's being expressed. So it's definitely not right. You know.
No, I absolutely it's not. But we're going to kind of move off Georgia for a minute and look nationally. One of the things which we know we've talked about a lot, the Safe Banking Act, which many in the industry thought was going to be in the National Defense Authorization Act, and it would be the vehicle that would finally carry cannabis banking to legalization. But now they're saying that's not going to happen. They're stating, for example, that it's just like Lucy pulling that football away from Charlie Brown. Right as he's about to kick it, she pulls that ball away and he falls on his face. And they're just stating that it's not a current state of fair play. And once again, we're back to the beginning on safe banking.
You know, the unfortunate thing about the Safe Banking Act, by not passing it and getting it to that industry legally and lawfully, it puts every business at risk
Oh,
of
yeah.
not only imminent failure, but also making them vulnerable to being preyed upon
Mm-hmm.
by people who commit robberies and thefts. And it's just because they're sitting on a large amount of cash. They're not able to do the transactions safely through ACH, um, which is through the wire. That's all federal, and that's something that the government definitely have to put into play as they look at. One, you've got 23 states that have passed legislation on making this legal. The support should be in place to continue to structure and create infrastructure for safe regulation of the industry. And that's one thing that I totally feel and see that the federal government is dropping the ball on.
Oh, absolutely. And I know you and I have discussed this, and I don't remember if we shared it on here or not. But a CBD store near my house, I was talking to them not long ago, and they told me that a national known bank, so I'm not going to give that name, but you got to think there's only about what, four real big nationally known banks. This is one of the companies that they did their business with. And when they found out that they were depositing money and owned a CBD store, they told them that they no longer wanted them to use their bank, but that their personal business account was allowed to stay there, just not their corporate one. So he pulled his personal as well. That's when they tried to rescind and change it and say, no, 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 you're still welcomed. But he, and I agree with him, took his money out because they would not allow a state regulated licensed CBD store to use their bank.
You know, the issues with the banks are that they are federally insured. So you cannot go against what is going to guarantee your payout. Um, so in that case, it's definitely tough. The depositors help make the banks what they are today. But unfortunately, when you look at cannabis, still a Schedule One, and because it's still a Schedule One, the Fed is still gonna approach everything in the manner that it's doing. And any business that is attached to the Fed, they have no choice but to act in the best interest of the Fed.
No, you're right on that. So, that of course brings up the how does that get changed? How does the regulations get separated? I mean, we know that there's a lot of different types of loopholes and possibilities and what needs to be changed. But the question is, How and when and who?
Starts with taking it off Schedule One. As soon as they take it off of the Schedule One list, that is when things can change. Now it's not illegal, and that's across all states and all territories. And the day that that happens, I see safe banking going into place immediately. I don't even see a delay in it supporting the industry and fully blossoming the way it should be to support those businesses and also to create opportunities for others.
Now, absolutely. And the bright side is one of the senators from Denver, or sorry, yeah, from Colorado, Democrat, wants the government to get ready for the federal legalization, as you stated. And one way he describes it is a case of, no pun here, high hopes, that Hickenlooper, is introducing a bill that will direct the Department of Justice to construct a regulatory framework to use when cannabis is legal at the federal level. What chances do the legislations have? Well, keep in mind, as we stated before, Congress, 117th, is already in their holiday holding pattern. So it's drawn to a close. So this is something that can't come back up till 118th, which is roughly January 4th of next year. So we're going to be in a holding pattern for a couple of weeks until, our new Senate gets in, these elected officials, the new Congress starts. So the news we're going to hear over the next week or two is unfortunately just going to be hearsay until it can go forward, because we're in a dead session.
Yeah, it's definitely going into the holiday period. I don't see things going in any direction. Everything's going to stall out until after the second major holiday of the new year, which is King weekend. Once that holiday pass, you'll see everything, all the agendas for the entire fiscal year 23 will start coming out and they'll start discussing it. So, right now, enjoy the holidays, be merry, be happy, visit family, love family, and stay safe, especially during your travels.
Yep. Now, see, the bright side of this, though, is in Ohio, organizers are already beginning to put together for the 2023 election. But two other states, Florida, their cannabis supporters are gathering signatures, but they're saying that that's not going to be on the ballot till 2024. And Idaho is doing the same thing. So they're looking at a year and a half, 2 years from now.
Yeah. And generally, most of the decisions get pushed off for about 2 years. They have open sessions and they continue to discuss it until new information, new research hits the table, until one of the elected officials literally hand walking in, stick their arguing points, and get it validated. Until then, it's just a discussion. It's just an idea.
But now keep in mind, though, this is not all bad news marijuana related. Biden signed the act to allow researchers to study cannabis in order to learn more about the medicinal properties. So that was a big victory.
I can say that. I agree with you on that part. Um, what President Biden definitely have to continue to do is to stick to some of the promises that he made in the beginning as he ran for his presidency. We should hold him to some of the things that he said, and then he needs to clarify what
Right.
direction it's going to. I'm still looking for him to rescind a lot of the crime bill itself that he wrote uh, when he was a young senator, and then in addition to that, with him being commander in chief now, he still has to look at that the country is going into a recession, and he needs to create not only relief for people, but he also needs to create equity for people.
Well, you know what? Leading into what you had just stated about holding him accountable, now this is not solely him, but we're going to talk about something that I know has been not just well inside of the cannabis industry. across the nation. I'm sure people have seen it on social media, the news, and whatnot. And of course, we've all heard about Brittany Griner has come back home. She's been released from Russia in that prisoner swap after 10 months in custody. But there are two other individuals that I know for sure are still over there. One of them we've heard about, Paul Whelan, which those who have not studied him, yes, he is over there being detained with cannabis charges, but it's more than that. So there's some espionage charges and a few other things. Last I heard, he was put into what they call an IK2A, hard labor penal colony, and then he's now actually in the hospital due to undisclosed medical reasons. But there's another interesting name that I've not really heard anywhere on the news, and that's Marc Fogel. Have you heard anything about him other than just what you and I have discussed?
No, I haven't. And
Okay.
the thing about it is that, unfortunately, they are not an Olympic gold medalist.
Right.
They're not a national champion. They're not a, you know,
Former
they
military.
definitely, everyone deserves to come home.
Yes.
And unfortunately, it's a situation where Brittany, because of her name and because she has these large multi-million dollar organizations that are backing her, along with a number of celebrities that know her name, that know her personally, and um, there's a way that you can say that it's not fair to the Whelan family, but it, once again, going back to what we initially discussed about opportunities and who you know. Well, when you know the president and you can get a message to the president, whether directly or indirectly, it's the same thing. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, in this situation, Brittany know the right people. The right people know Brittany, and they acted in her behalf, and they got her home. It took 10 months, but
Right.
I'm sure that she'll take that 10 months over 19 years where she was
Oh, absolutely.
sentenced. So it's a happy day for her. Um, Now the question is, because of her charges, um, is it something that we have to open it up and make a normacy for cannabis or CBD related possessions? Um, is this is a situation where people also have to benchmark the fact that, hey, when you're going abroad to these foreign countries, you got to be careful of what you possess or have in your possession when you go into these countries, so you do not find yourself in these unfortunate circumstances. A lot of times we may take for granted, just certain things, but there's a certain mindfulness that you have to have in these situations, and people make mistakes. You just mind your business. You're going back and forth, but this is especially dealing with Russia. You think I'm going to Russia?
Right.
No, no. So I know that there's business and there's opportunities everywhere in the world. But when you go into a country like that has that level of conflict, if you didn't know, now you know.
Right.
You better go over there righteous, because if you don't, you're gonna be wrongfully detained.
Well,
Um,
and well, I'm glad you said wrongfully detained because we're going to get to that in a moment because Brittany was classified as wrongfully detained. Marc has not been.
yeah, and the thing about Mark, uh, you know, there are circumstances regarding his possession case
Right.
that you just got to look at it, and you got to remember that internationally, from one country to the next, the laws vary. And we know in Russia, they'll put you away for a long, long time for cannabis possession. Same thing for China. They'll
Yes.
put you away for a long, long time for cannabis possession. United Emirates, they will put you away for a very long time for cannabis possession. And then certain drugs, they'll put you to death for those possessions. So you just got to know the law of the land for where you're
Well,
going at.
Dubai.
You can't go there. Yeah,
Dubai is one
absolutely.
of those that
Well,
would be death, right?
Dubai is the Emirates. That's what I was
Yeah,
talking about.
that's yeah, right,
United Emirates. Yeah. So yeah, they'll put you to death if you're in possession. Mess around and have some coke or cocaine if you want to. You'll be put to death over there
right.
unless you know someone. And I thought we talked about this
We
in a
did.
previous case where an artist went over there and was in possession of if not coke or cocaine, and he was on. Um, there was an intervention.
Yes,
Um,
that's the best way for to put it.
that's that's the best way to put it. There was an intervention that kept him from being put to death.
Right.
So it's once again, it still goes back to who you know.
No, absolutely, because Mark was a school teacher. And he had been over there in Russia multiple times. He had even taught children of ambassadors, diplomats, and international schools across the globe. And actually, this was his last trip to Russia.
Yes,
And he
yes,
never even made it to the school.
and unfortunately, you would think respectably with him being a teacher,
Right.
that there would at least be an exception, and then also at the same time that he was legally prescribed,
Right.
you would think that that would be an exception. But once again, when you're talking about foreign diplomacy and foreign relations, the United States don't have good relations with the Soviet Union or Russia. So that is a situation where, unfortunately, unfortunately, Mr. Fogel was at the wrong place at the wrong time
Right.
with the wrong stuff.
And he was
Um,
charged with smuggling, possession, and he was given a 14-year sentence.
yeah, pretty harsh. It is pretty harsh, especially when he was legally prescribed.
Right.
But once again, you got two countries that don't really have good relations with each other, and you got a citizen from one country going into another country, and unfortunately, they're going to be made examples.
Right.
Um, so this goes back to how do we move forward for the people that's still being held? What is the solution? What is the bargain to get these people home? Um, we should have a plan for that, but then, of course, sometimes it takes time to negotiate um, your bargaining chips, and this one's going to be tough. I mean, in one sense of the matter, in Brittany's case, you release someone who had their hand in atrocities that happen around the world. And you got to ask yourself, was it truly worth it? True indeed, Brittany is our prize possession. She's an Olympic gold medalist. She's a champion. Um, at the same time, you got some people that don't agree. Then you have a lot that agree. So it's a lot of people in that situation. So even for myself, I agree that she should be home. Um, I do not feel that she shouldn't be. And once again, exceptions are made for when you create exceptions, and she is an exception.
No, absolutely. And I'd like to see all of these people come home. Now, I'm not in any ways condoning the fact that they broke another country's law. They did. And look, had I done it, I promise you I would still be in there as well. But, I'd like to see it worked out to where they all get to come home because Mark, for example, he's 61 years old. He just got moved to one of those IK2A hard labor penal colonies and not been incarcerated. And I'm not saying that our jails are, 5-star resorts here by any stretch of the means. But my understanding of these type of places, one, you're in bitter cold. You don't have individual cells. Your cells are open to the outside weather. So someone who has chronic back pain, not only having to work in the penal colony, but he's constantly in that cold, not getting warm,
Yeah,
not having time to rest. I mean, his body's got to be deteriorating and being even worse for him. And he's not allowed his medicine.
yeah, that's horrible, and that's something where we all need to continue to pray for him and his family, for his safe return. And I really truly hope our commander in chief can find some way of making some form of amends to get all of them back home.
Absolutely, because Marc's sister, Lisa Highland, she says that she's happy that Griner is home. She's trying to be optimistic about it and what that can mean for her brother's return, because certainly her and her family wanted him on that plane. But one of the big things that is different in the two, other than, as you stated, Brittany, being WNBA, nationally known, Olympic, and all that, it happened right about that time of the Ukraine war. So she was used, as we'd stated before, political prisoner, but her name bears weight. The school teacher, even though he's helped, like we said, diplomats, leaders from around the world, not only are we not really even hearing much about him here, I don't know if anybody is really trying to fight on his end. Of course, we're not going to see everything behind closed doors, but his family even goes on to state that Brittany was listed as wrongfully detained. Fogel's, by contrast, has gained little public attention. The State Department has not granted him as wrongfully detained. They're stating that they are working on it, but the family has no idea what that means. They don't know where it lies, what the progress is. They're not really being told much.
Yeah, the tough thing about, if you really look at the situation itself, um, he was labeled as a smuggler.
Right.
Um, Very derogatory. When you when you look at what it is, and then based off the amount itself, you still got to look at what's there. The circumstances is he was legally prescribed it, but once again, in another country's law of the land, it is a full-fledged violation. We also talk about Mr. Whelan. Um, he has an espionage charge.
Correct.
Uh, some countries' espionage charges comes with death, if not life in prison. So you just got to look at the total value. Um, the swap for Brittany and the arms dealer, they could have brought one of the two, if not all three, home based off
Right.
of the accumulation of years. You got one guy with a 25-year sentence, Brittany with a 9. You got the other gentleman with 14. Do you remember how many years Mr. Whelan was sentenced?
So I'm actually looking at an article on him right now. He was arrested December 28th, 2018. Okay. So he was, and as you stated, he was over there for a wedding, but there is reports that a Russian citizen handed him a USB drive containing a list of all the employees at the classified security agency. So I'm trying to see what else they were saying, because I know that there was some form of the charge as well. But I think he has, last I saw, been given 17. I think it was 17 years, but I could be wrong. Let's see right here. On June 15th, 2020, he was convicted and sentenced to 16 years in a Russian prison for espionage. His lawyers said they believe Russia would now seek a prisoner swap, but we saw that with Brittany. He has been put into as of 2 years ago now, December 2020, high security prison IK-17, roughly 8 hours southeast of Moscow. But the question is, I thought that he had some kind of cannabis marijuana charges, and I'm not seeing that in this article, just the espionage.
Yeah, that was tough. So that means he's dead 5 years and he has 11 years left on his sentence. Um, it's easy to say 11, 9, and then you have what was it, 14?
Mm-hmm.
They could have got two of them for one. Um, they should have gotten at least two for one, if not three for one on that.
No, true. But a little bit later in this article that I'm reading, Russia's side insisted on additional release of Vadim Krasnov, an assassin serving a life sentence for murder in Germany. After negotiations, only Griner was exchanged, and the Kremlin had refused. Keep that again. the Kremlin had refused to release Whelan and posed an ultimatum to Biden's administration on freeing Griner or no one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's one of those things that, we've discussed education, not just in this industry, in this election time. These are all the things too, as we stated, we'd like to see these people home, but we're looking at a cannabis charge on Brittany, a cannabis charge on Marc, and an espionage charge on Paul Whelan. Those are a little bit different.
Yeah. I told you that espionage is almost next to high treason.
Right.
But
Well, it's
that's
like
why I
an
was saying,
assassination attempt on a president.
yeah, yeah. That's why I was saying at least two out of the three should have came.
Absolutely.
It's just kind of tough that they only just permitted one, because when you look at one with 9 year sentence and you got one with a 25-year sentence, that wasn't an even swap.
No.
That was one sided. Russia in that case had all the power, and had a prized possession. Um, so I'm not sure what's going to happen with the other two. Like I said, we should definitely pray for their families
Oh, yeah.
and pray for them.
No, absolutely. Because Fogel's family has said that they've been in discussions with these senior officials in the State Department, but remain largely in the dark about the situation of any of these negotiation status. And like we just talked about, they're wanting a prisoner released from Germany. So how do we, in terms of, a sports affiliation, make a three-way team swap? Are we going to make a trade to Germany, to have Germany trade to Russia, to have Russia trade to us? How do you get three separate nations involved in this when, like I said, Russia wants this guy who's held in Germany?
Well, obviously, Russia is showing what kind of power they have,
Absolutely.
and what kind of hardball they're playing, and that hardball they're playing for keeps. Um, we as a country definitely have to be careful of that, and we definitely have to make sure that our people stand together and stay strong. Through these individual ordeals with people who are not at home, not with their family, especially for this holiday period. As I said, we still got to continue to pray for them. I'm like this one. It hurts because I would hate it for it to be my family member that's held and incarcerated. And it's trivial when you have a person who gets let go, and then I'm still being held. So I,
Right.
I definitely, my heart goes out to them, and we hope that we can get them home.
No, absolutely. Because, for example, kind of looking a little bit more into Paul's case, he enlisted in 1994 into the Marine Corps. He took a military leave from Kelly's services to serve in the Marine Corps from 2003 to 8. He served in Iraq. He held the rank of staff sergeant. However, after a court martial convicted him in January of 2008, multiple counts of larceny, he was sentenced to 60 days restriction, reduced his pay, and a bad conduct discharge. The charges included larceny, 3 specifications of declaration of duty, making a false official statement, wrongfully using another social security number, 10 specifications of making and uttering checks without having significant funds in his accounts for payments. When arrested in Russia, he was the director of global security investigations for Brogner Warner, an international automotive parts based in Michigan. And he traveled several times from Russia from 2006. So he's had a lot of time over there. But as we've stated, he had some issues in the military here as well.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he has two stains against him.
Yes.
Um, one with his own country, and then of course one with Russia. And Russia doubled down, saying, "Hey, not him. Um, Anything that would compromise that country, I think they're gonna hold you. They're gonna hold you to what you did." So I think that was really tough. I don't want to say that his situation is better than the next, but
No,
facts are the facts on that one.
no, they are, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring it all up, because so many times, whether we get caught up in social media, the news, or whatever, we don't always compare apples to apples.
Right.
We look at one fruit and think that it should be the next one when they're not comparable. And to be honest, Marc's case and Brittany's cases are closer to reality and equality on those charges. Paul's is not. Paul's is a
No.
different level.
Paul is definitely a different level. Um, I would say that for the person that was exchanged for Brittany, that would have been an easy swap for those two, because the realms and the regards are about the same. I still feel that um, between Brittany and Mark, I totally feel that uh, opinion wise, this is my opinion, that Russia put it to another level that it's not.
Right.
We talking about personal use, personal consumption. You got one person charged with smuggling charges, which technically here that's called possession with intent to distribute.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a serious charge, but at the same time, when you look at it, um, their penal system is definitely very very harsh. So please don't go to Russia. That's about all. That's why I stand with that one. Don't go to Russia.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because, again, and we're not in any way, shape, or form trying to sit here and sound like we're beating down Paul or anybody else. We're just trying to present what we see as the facts, the articles, the evidence. I want them all to come home. But I would also like for the media to focus a little bit on Marc, because, again, we are apples to apples there. These are very similar charges. And yes, it should have been a 2-for-1. Absolutely. Because there are a lot of people in the military, right, wrong, and different, or because of maybe wrong leaders, they get charges and get discharged a lot. So that is unfortunately something that happens in our military. But this is a man who was discharged for multiple infractions.
Yeah. And I think that is the part that's going to hold him there a lot longer. And like I said, we just got to pray for his safe and speedy return.
No, absolutely. We'd love to see a Christmas miracle, so to speak, and they all come home by Christmas. I know Brittany and her family is ecstatic that she's home. We're glad that she's safe and out of those elements, because we talked about how brutal the women's colony was. They barely had water, let alone water that we consider proper for drinking. They didn't get feminine products. They were stuck in a room with what, 50, 60 women?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So that had to have been rough. In no way, shape, or form I'm saying that she had it easy. She's not sitting like some of our, political leaders or CEOs who get indicted on stuff and they're in a Hilton prison with 5-star food. She was in a very rough area. And my understanding
Right.
was she was about to get sent to one of those work penal colonies as well.
Right.
So that
Yes.
it was no vacation for her, believe me. But as
Yeah,
we get
that's
here to the close of another segment, almost closing down this year. But I see a lot of great things that we're going to be talking about, because we've got some stuff in the works that we're working on here in Georgia. Because we want to further the movement, the advocacy to get the reform done here. But we also want to help what we can across the nation too. So we're going to have some guests coming really soon to help get not just us, but everybody informed and educated, because this business is huge, immersive. I don't even think we scratched the surface.
I know. I know. It's so much to be talked about, and we definitely got to bring in other professionals that are leaders in the industry. There are multiple lanes, almost 2 dozen lanes that are occupied with knowledge regarding this space with cannabis. We definitely got to get those individuals involved, so that way they can educate and provide more exposure in the industry, so that way
Right.
this unknown industry can be found. We definitely will need it. We are heading into a recession. So without question, we need all of the support and the factual information, so that way we can give people a better chance, a better alternative, um, more recreation for themselves, and
Right.
more therapy for the
Yes.
individuals that need it medicinally.
No, absolutely. Because yeah, we've spoken before. This is a hard time of the year for a lot of people, and the cold, the darkness doesn't help. I don't want to say surprised, but it's kind of caught me a little bit off guard. The amount of people that I've talked to on social media that are struggling right now, divorces, deaths, you know, income problems. Like for me personally, I got let go days before Christmas one time. My kids were little. I mean, not to the point of understanding any of that. And I literally sat in my mind and sat there and thought, how do I explain to them that Santa can't see you this year because having a house to stay in was a little bit more important?
No, I definitely understand, and now God's been with you the entire time and got you to this point. So kids still
I
love you. That's
agreed.
all that matters.
I don't. I 100% agree with you. But for all these people that are struggling, when I was struggling, for example, I always heard it gets better, and it does. I'm not saying that, but I was at that point where I didn't see that light on the other end of the tunnel, and not even being halfway through that tunnel, sometimes that was the last thing you wanted to hear.
Yeah,
And I know people mean well, and they want to give you advice and that pat on the back and encourage you, but sometimes that encouragement feels like a slap.
yeah. The good thing about it is it's also could be considered a nudge. Um,
Sure, it's a fine
a
line.
nudge
I
can keep
agree.
you going. It can definitely keep you going, and as long as the intentions of keeping you going was there, hopefully it's perceived that you will keep going,
No, absolutely, and
received
every
and received.
right, and everybody that's listening, when we say these stories, this is not to pat ourselves on the back. This is not to try to lift us up. This is to say we may not be going through the same thing, but we have gone through stuff and
Right.
understand that it's difficult and it's hard. So, like I've said
Yep.
before, anybody reach out to me on my Instagram, on Twitter. I'd be happy to listen and talk to you because sometimes you just need that ear and somebody who doesn't understand the situation.
And that's one thing that OG was talking about on the
Mhm.
shows. Just having some form of support, and knowing that we're out here. We do this discussion every week. And we would love other people to chime in,
Absolutely.
supporting the discussion. And at the end of the day, even a day in the life, it lets us know what people are going through. And everybody has a same commonality when it comes to struggles in life, just needing encouragement, needing some upliftment, or maybe some type of therapeutic that can get the stress and the anxiety off of you. So we know that the plant provides that. We know the
Absolutely.
CBD provides that. So, and then of course, smoking it and consuming it provides that. So, for what we need now is just the clarity. We need some change. We need some new laws. We need some new legislation. We need some new leaders. We have to continue to vote. We have to continue to lobby. And we still have to go out and still show the support that this industry needs so that way we can see the change that we're looking for.
No, absolutely. And then maybe we need some hemp Christmas trees. So after you've got it up there for the season, you take it down, you smoke it, you use it for other products, and we're good to go.
That's a Christmas stash.
Right?
Yeah.
Put it out in the backyard, burn it, let the whole entire neighborhood enjoy.
Ooh, that'd be nice to burn like 15, 20 pounds at one time, right?
Oh, geez.
That's a
I don't think the
bonfire for
neighborhood's going to
real.
get much done at that point, but
Ooh. Oh
is
gosh,
that
with a
considered
nice,
sharing the Christmas spirit?
I know, with a little bit of wind, yeah, that'll spread through the community real quick.
Oh, absolutely. But guys, we're ending on some laughing, which is what everybody needs, especially this time of year. But we hope that this today helped educate some. And that's what we're here for. That's what we're going to continue to doing. And the last thing I really want to state on is, again, anybody that's going through struggles, you're not alone. And when you get that voice in your head that says nobody cares, nobody wants to listen, it's not their fault. That's just the devil trying to keep you away from getting help. There are people who care.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
we hope everybody has a blessed week. Get ready for those holidays. Do something special for yourself, just not others. Do it for your family, but do something for yourself as well. Go out today, maybe have a cup of hot coffee, hot cocoa with a little whipped cream on top, something. It's something minuscule that can help make your day, because that's important. So I don't know if you're still there or not. Okay, cool. I was just gonna say real quick, let people know how they can reach out to you and support you.
Absolutely. Follow me, Big Boy Sam with 2 M's on IG. Check me out on LinkedIn as well. Send me a message. Join us every Wednesday as we stream from 11 to 12. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you.
Absolutely. And once again, all of these are available on our YouTube channel, as well as posts that we put up every day on our Matcha page on Facebook, Matcha on Twitter. For me, myself, not only can you connect to us on our Matcha Foundation pages on both Twitter and Facebook, but me personally, DJNQ75 on Instagram as well as Twitter. Pray for all of you guys. Keep safe this week, and we look forward to seeing you next Wednesday, just before Christmas.
All right. Happy holidays. Merry
Happy
Christmas.
holiday, Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, or whatever it's called. But
Kwanzaa.
whatever you celebrate, enjoy. And be with your
All right.
friends and family. That's the most important thing right now.
Absolutely.
All right. We'll
All
see you
right. Till
guys
next
all
time.
next week. Yep.